Oh, yay! Perfect.
This is great. Thank you so much for making the time. So I get a lot of questions about the PhD, and I always have to start with the confession that I think when it comes to getting on the PhD trajectory, I had a ridiculously privileged life. I was encouraged to apply for a PhD. I got an offer where I made the one application, and that was it for me. So whenever people are asking about the different types of PhDs, how they get funding, how they get started, I'm usually clueless. But there's a lot of people who are hungry to do it and they really want to do it right. And I think you and I will both know the ways in which things can go wrong with the PhD if people don't start. So
Yeah.
I'm grateful that you could make this time because there are a lot of people who are dying to get their questions answered when it comes to the PhD journey and what they would like to do. So before we start, I think it would be nice to know your story. I saw your LinkedIn post. Was it last week when you were celebrating your birthday
Oh,
and you
yeah,
were
two
talking
weeks ago
about
almost. Yeah.
your on start, yeah, how you got on the PhD trajectory. And I think that's such a fantastic story that it will be a nice place to start.
Yeah.
So who is Cynthia and how did Cynthia end up doing a PhD?
Thank you, Dr. Noni. First of all, thank you for having me. It's great to, be on here to pour into your community. Yeah, who am I? I am, yeah, my story is, I don't know if it's typical for a lot of people because I had the privilege of having two bachelor's degrees. So I have a Bachelor of Science in Biological Sciences, and then I went and did an after degree in Social and Cultural Anthropology. I've been in research for my first degree, so I worked with doctors in there, I worked with a particular oncologist. I worked with research scientists in the medical setting. I initially wanted to be a doctor. Obviously, I feel like I grew up and then I realized it's a really hard job.
Yeah. Then you wanted to be another kind of doctor, not
I was
that
like,
kind of
no,
doctor.
not that kind of doctor. So yeah, when I did my second degree, which was in anthropology, I really enjoyed it. I loved it. It was a lot of fun. And I decided I was going to go ahead and do a master's, but also merge my interest in medical sciences anyway. I had an interest in it. I'd been a career volunteer as well in different hospitals, particularly in end of life care. So I
Oh,
decided to, yes, I decided to pursue my master's in anthropology, but studying assisted dying laws in Canada. So I wanted to understand how the physicians understood those laws and policies and put them into practice. Like, how does assisted dying actually look like in practice? That was my interest, my interest, and what I eventually did my master's in. My master's, depending on people's sort of background, their countries, what they do, my master's was like a mini PhD. In fact, the length of time I took 3 years to complete my master's,
oh,
full,
wow.
did data collection analysis, wrote up my thesis. I don't recall how many words, but I think it's about a
That's
hundred
incredibly
pages.
rare. Yeah.
Yeah, I defended my thesis. I had to defend my proposal with my
Oh,
supervisors, then
wow.
go out do data collection, then go out and actually come back and present it. I had a proper defense. I passed with minor corrections. So when I it was amazing, but I was very lucky to have I was in an amazing program, University of Calgary, anthropology and archaeology department, very, very supportive, amazing professors. I find that in particular fields, I know in medicine it's particularly very competitive. People are sometimes stepping over each other, but at least in terms of the supervisors I was surrounded by, I didn't have that impression. They were constantly lifting me up. And I know that in general, academia can be like that. If you are in a really positive environment with people who are genuinely kind, they'll we're constantly trying to lift each other up. And that was the environment I was in. And in my second year, I believe it was my second year, it was a later half, I was looking for a job. I was just looking for a new experience. And my supervisor encouraged me to apply, and she was pushing me. And I got a job in the UK. I got a job interview for a job in the UK. And my supervisor, she's an amazing human being, Dr.
Yeah.
Jennifer Leeson. She gave me her office. I was already even allowed to use her office. She gave me her office and asked me to sit on her desk and interview So you can imagine how confident that made me feel. She told me, come in, use my office. I'm not going to come in, you interview. And I got offered the job on the spot. Moved to the
Wow.
UK. Yeah, I finished up my master's in the pandemic, submitted it. And I kept working as a research manager in a local hospice. While I was there, I got some grants as well, worked with an amazing mentor who was situated end of life care similarly. And she offered me to continue and do a PhD with her as well. But because of how precarious, I wasn't too sure about my visa situation and I wanted full funding. I didn't want, to pay international fees. And I wasn't even sure if I'd be eligible. So when we looked into it, we realized that, what, I'm not eligible. But she said, she'd love to keep in touch with me. But I was like, oh, there's somebody in my team, a volunteer, who I think would be a good fit. So I suggested them to do the PhD and actually even helped support their application as well. Um, and while I was still in that job, I had my baby. I had in the back of my mind, I wanted to do my PhD, but I gave myself no pressure. That's like
No.
the very first thing I did. I was like, you know what? My goal is to have a fully funded PhD. I don't want to pay an arm and a leg, but it has to be a PhD that I think impacts my community and is in what I'm interested in. So I had very, very set goals. So once in a while, I'll just go do some searches, look around for either funding. And I was also on some mailing lists as well because of my job and how I've done a lot of work to get infiltrate some of these mailing lists where, they'll circulate PhDs and stuff like that. So I was on the, lookout. And I happened on one day, I don't know if it was on Twitter or where I saw it initially, I saw this PhD and I saw the deadline. It was due on a Sunday night and it was like maybe Wednesday or Thursday. And I was like, oh, I don't have the time. And then the next day, I saw it on another platform again. But this time, I think I saw my supervisor at that time. He tweeted, he was like, if anybody's still interested, I'm happy to have a chat. So I sent an email immediately. I was like, I'm interested. Is this, still available? And he sent me a link to join a call immediately. I
Oh, wow.
jumped on the call, had a chat with him, and I said, I'm really interested. This is why I'm interested. This is a topic that's dear to my heart. I told him why. I said I wanted to do an end of life care. We negotiated and we settled that like health related because I wanted to make the PhD my own. And he was like, okay, you can put in an application. So he basically, gave his blessing to put in the application. I had 3 days, and I told him realistically, this is what I can do in 3 days. Anything else? He's just like, do what you can in 3 days. And I did it. I would say at that point in time, the only thing I didn't do was the references, which were completely out of my control. But thankfully, the application process obviously allowed that to be delayed. So I put in the application. I was sick. Had my son must have been like 8 months or 9 months
Oh,
old at that time, and I did it. I remember the night it was due, like the clock was ticking, and my husband was like, just give it. I'm not going to do it. It's too late. But I believed, I had put so much effort. I believed I could do it. And I put it in. And I actually missed by, I don't know how long I missed the deadline by, but I just clicked submit and it let me submit. And yeah, fast forward, I got the offer, full funding, and with a stipend as well. And I'm about 2 years in. So yeah,
that's
that's
a
my
wild,
story.
wild story. That's a also very, very encouraging story. I think I pick up some things, and I'm probably now gonna just be all over the place. But I will just stop first to say to the audience, at least I'm trying to keep track of the questions. So there will be a window where I ask those questions. So Gums, if you're still in the room, I did see your question and I did write it down. It does go fast. I might miss some things, so please forgive me if I miss your question. It's also good to see some old friends. Rejoice All Earth, thank you so much for stopping by. And I saw Toyota earlier as well. And I see we also have Job, like a lot of great people from day one, like when I first got on the internet streets, these are people that I still recognize. So I'm so glad you guys are still here. Thank you so much. Rejoice All Earth and enjoy work. So guys, just for tonight, we're really talking about the PhD and for people who are trying to think about how they can do this. I've asked Cynthia to come and help because she's an academic coach and she's helping people who are trying to get started on the path to the PhD and who want to make it count. So if you really want to be strategic and intentional and get the most out of your PhD, she's the person to go to. So I've invited her just to get a sense of what is involved if people want to make that decision. And as I have said, just for the sake of the conversation, because I hope we can make this available on YouTube later. So Cynthia, don't say anything you don't want out on the internet streets because I'm not editing it out. But then it would be nice, I think, to be able to have this conversation out for the benefit of other people later. And then also we will just ask the questions as they come through, the ones that I'm able to capture. We're going to ask. I have one from Gumsa. And I think maybe I can already accommodate that question because it came in quickly enough. But I want to start with the question of parenthood, particularly motherhood. Because one of the things that I learned now, I'm part of a network, the Southern Women Academics Network. And the majority of these women are people who parked their careers or their academic ambitions in order to have families, or they try to pursue the academic ambitions alongside having a family. So it happens that a lot of us in that network are probably in our 40s or late 30s at the time that we obtain the PhD. And we are usually kind of behind already in terms of the funding opportunities. Like we get a lot of funding opportunities and they say it must be under 40. And we're like, some of us even started PhDs at 50 years old. So, you know, how was it for you making that decision, having an 8-month-old and thinking, you know what, I'm going to make things more exciting and I'm just going to go for a PhD? And how is life right now, motherhood with the PhD as well? And then finally, what will be your words to someone who's a mother or considering parenthood and also wants to do a PhD?
Yeah. Wow. Okay, I have to give credit to again the training I had in my masters. It was a really amazing setup for me in terms of not just academia itself and learning and just being, a good academic, but I was surrounded by some amazing women who were in different life stages. My supervisor had 2 kids. She had her first baby in her masters and her second in
Oh,
her
wow.
PhD. And she had an amazing supervisor who covered her. For anybody who knows, when you have a baby, sometimes, especially for academics, that can be incredibly precarious, depending on what your funding situation is or what the payment situation with your university is. You might lose funding. So she had an amazing supervisor who really covered her and supported her in ways that I think even went above and beyond what would be expected in that situation. So I also had in the department, there was another academic as well. She was, I think at that time, might have been in her mid to late 30s. She was trying to have a baby. I think she was pregnant at that time, but she'd been trying to have a baby for a while. And she had also started her academic journey and also realized, oh, I actually want to have a baby. But, she's in this, I think she was in a tenured role at that time. And then there was another academic as well who had been trying for many years as well and was in her I think mid to late 30s trying to have a baby, but she was also established in her academic career. So they were kind of giving 3 different perspectives. One person who took the risk of having babies through while at the same time trying to have get their degree. Other people who put a pause on that, got their PhDs, got into academic jobs, and now they're trying to have babies, and they were being very, very realistic about what were the cost benefit analysis.
Yeah.
What I do remember my supervisor telling me was just to do it. Don't ever the supervisor you have is the most important investment you can make. She said that to me, and she was a great supervisor. Like when I hear stories of other people who in their masters and their PhD, the kind of supervisors they have, I'm very thankful for like both my masters and my PhD so far, like having a very, very positive experience, incredibly supportive supervisors. So she told me that was the foundation. Like if you want to have a family and you don't want to wait until maybe a certain age, you're like, I want to do this now. You need to make sure you have the best supervisor who can support you through that process. So I am so thankful for the education I had in my master's because it was a well-rounded education. It wasn't just this is how to be a good academic, but this is how to kind of thrive in your personal life alongside that. I decided to take the plunge because one, I feel like I'm quite spoiled. My husband is very supportive,
Yeah.
unfortunately, very supportive of me doing my PhD. My parents are very supportive. My husband is so supportive that he's like, I don't want your family accusing me of not like,
Holding
supporting,
you
like you
back.
need to
Yeah.
go and do that PhD. So I'm very thankful that he was very supportive of me. He never like put a cap on, oh, this is not what we can do. Because doing a PhD and taking that plunge is a financial sort of risk as well, right? You have a stable job, you have finances to very like easy peasy, and then you'll decide you're like, oh, I'm just gonna walk away from all of that and just be a student again. So I think all of that probably encouraged me, and I was also like, I think maternity leave is also an amazing time to kind of reevaluate what you want to do with your life. And I had a lot of reflection, a time to reflect. I had this baby, and at the same time, I don't want to. I want my son to look at me and see somebody who was courageous, who went for what they wanted to do, who was brave. Because I want him to be brave as well. I don't want him to think, oh, what if, and let fear keep him back from what he can do. So I think that sort of desire to model to your child the kind of life that you envision for them means that I
Yeah.
have to be willing to take that risk as well. So yeah, I think in answer to your final question, how is that going? To be absolutely honest with you right now, I think I just take one day at a time. That's my absolute focus. Just as long as my son is fine, he's
Yeah.
eating well, he's breathing, he's happy and playing, I'm well, I'm, happy, and I'm like, inching along. I've got a colleague, a PhD colleague, and we have these co-working sessions, and usually we say at some point during our session, like, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Yeah.
So that is just it for me, like in terms of motherhood, in terms of PhD, in terms of like even, juggling, working alongside it. It's just, I think I just take one day at a time and just focus on each day. Because if I take too many steps back, like sometimes I will panic and I'll say, oh, but why didn't I take hold of this opportunity? Because being a mother means that my son has to go to nursery from a certain time to a certain time. So anything that doesn't fit within that time does not exist, right? So it's anything that is outside of that time that my partner can't support me with, that it's bye bye. So sometimes you feel like there's a bus coming and you're missing the bus. And I just tell myself that, as women, we can do it all, but not all at once. We can do it all, but not all at once. I just need to like take my time. There's always a cost benefit analysis. I don't need to have all my academic CV done within my PhD. I still have my PhD to build more experience, and that's okay. I
Yeah.
don't need to get into a tenure track job tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah, I think actually taking that pressure off yourself also is one of the surest way to get things done. When I was finishing my PhD, I also had a kid by that time. And
No.
I had started the PhD childless. I got married during the PhD and we were childless for 3 years. And then we had a kid and it was so difficult. Like that was the most difficult transition. But one of the things that you say that is true, and I even got a sign in my office for this, you can do anything, but not everything. So this is something
Mm.
that I had to internalize, like, okay, if on a particular day or a particular month or even a particular quarter, right, for 3 months straight,
Mm.
I'm not able to achieve certain things, it's not because there's something wrong with me. It's just
Mm.
because I realistically have so much time. And
Yeah.
sometimes some things are going to have to be deprioritized over others. So I
Yeah.
also always say to people, when people talk about work-life balance, I'm like, it's work-life gymnastics. Sometimes I'm up in the air and I'm doing the impossible things. But at the end of that, again, I'm going to need to take my rest. I'm going to need to step back on certain things and we keep it moving. So I do like that analogy, like how you eat an elephant one bite at a time. That's all you do. On some days you'll try to take a bit, but you will also have to accept that then for a certain while you wouldn't be able to do more because you have all these things competing for your attention.
Yeah.
So there was a related question, but you probably already answered it from Tandy, who was asking, she says, I'm a mother and I'm a wife. How do you juggle household and studies?
Household. Ah, I'm gonna be honest. I don't. I'm gonna be honest. I don't. I outsource some things. That's something my husband. It's good for our relationship as well. Um, when I got pregnant with my son, there was no PhD. I didn't even have this, and even that was hard.
Yeah,
And I remember one particular day, I was thinking to myself, and I happened to be on the phone with my mom, and I was telling her, I have all these household responsibilities on my head. I'm pregnant. I feel like I'm about to all my insides are about to come out. And she just said to me, don't kill yourself. You either leave it. It's okay if the house is a mess. It's okay if there's no food, you can order food and you'll be fine. Don't kill yourself. You either do that or you're willing to pay to get somebody to help you. And that was the beginning of my peace, even peace in my life and peace, like my husband and I don't stress him about okay, what does I know that at some point this month this house will be clean.
yeah,
At some point this month this house will be clean. And if there's nobody available to help me, I at some point I will have time and I just move on. Sometimes, I didn't grow up that way, obviously. Like, when you're growing up, there's a lot of discipline. So, obviously, transitioning into motherhood, then you learn from other mothers, even sometimes your own, that wait, the house was not always clean. The
yeah,
house was not always, there was not always, sometimes we ordered pizza, and that was, as long as we are fed and we're going to bed, that's fine. So, I think you're just making, personally for me, I don't know about you, Dr. Noni, but I just make peace with the fact that, you know, you're not going to have all your nutrients on one particular day. It's going to be spread over the week, sometimes over the month, and that's okay. That's fine as well. That's, yeah.
yeah. One thing I try to do is batch cook. So either
Oh,
Saturday or Sunday, I'm gonna be cooking for the week. And usually, if the week starts and I didn't do it, I know I'm done for that week. Like, no way I'm going to be in the kitchen on Monday and on Tuesday and on Wednesday. I cannot do that. But I
yeah,
can dedicate 3 or 4 hours over the weekend to cook everything. And
yeah,
maybe then we boil the rice or something else, but at
yeah,
least the mains have to be done and frozen and properly packaged. Otherwise, it's a train wreck after that.
yeah,
And yes, when those weeks start and I haven't done it, then I have to accept that maybe 2 out of those 3 days from Monday to Friday,
yeah,
we're just gonna junk our way through it. No,
yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah,
not
yeah.
yeah. So I think
We,
being kinder to ourselves is something that also makes a very big difference, as you say.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. I think it must have been last Christmas. I don't remember exactly. There was a lot of pressure. I think that's when I actually started data collection fully. I tried also asking let's say local aunties in my community to help batch cook food. And they would do it for a fraction of the cost that you would go and ask a restaurant to do it. So they did batch cook soup, stews. I froze it. All I had to do was just boil the rice or ask my husband to do it. And with time I found that I actually tend to just batch cook for the month. So
You're even better than me. You're
last
like 4 times more efficient.
last month, I probably made 10 liters of, maybe 8 liters of soup.
Oh, wow.
We have traditional jollof rice. I make
Woo!
8 liters of that. I freeze some. I've learned how to
I'd give
defrost
my
it in a
life for
way.
the jollof. Give me your address. I'm coming.
I can mail it to you frozen. By the time it gets to you, it'll be as if it was cooked the day before. So I learn. I think, and what I do is it's basically what you're doing, but I do it times 10. So
Wow.
So the weekend I'm batch prepping. I batch prep at a larger scale, but just 2 or 3 meals. So
Mhm.
that meal will last us for 6 to 8 weeks. And then each weekend or alternating weekends, I'll batch cook a lot. So what will end up happening is we'll have different options. Sometimes we run out and there's no food, that's fine. We order in and stuff. But typically I find that that works well for me. That I batch like a huge. I have these IKEA pots, 10 liters and 15 liters. They are like amazing for me, and that
Wow.
works in terms of cooking. But if not, I also have my in-laws can show up in the house.
Yeah, just never be scared to ask for help.
Yeah,
That's something that
shout
I
out to
love.
them. They fed us a few times. You can show up to their house and know that you're not going to leave hungry.
No, that's really good. Thank you so much for that. And for people who are mothers and wives, as we have in the audience, I hope this helps. I'm going to ask one last question, I think, and then we move on to the technical bits related to the PhD. This was from Gumza. I don't know if they're still in the room. Their question was, what was the difficult part during your PhD program, and how did you overcome that?
Oh my days. Okay, so I'm still very much in it. So I can say so far, the most challenging bit is probably data collection.
Hmm.
Because that's completely out of your hands. You're relying on other people because I'm working with people, even people who work in lab settings and stuff. That sometimes tends to be also the difficult part because I used in my first degree, I used to work in a lab as well. And even cells have their own they do their own thing.
Yeah,
You can run an experiment and it just something goes off and
yeah,
you've lost weeks and weeks of like, culturing cells, treating them. And so, yeah, I think that tends to be sometimes the most frustrating part because it's the one thing that you put so much effort into planning, controlling, thinking about the contingencies,
yeah,
and people will be people, right? And you can't force people to do anything. The same way you can't even force cells, like, or even inanimate objects can break one day. So I think for me, that's
yeah,
that's been the most challenging bit. And obviously, I think even in my part of my PhD is also studying that. So I'm studying other people. I'm studying researchers. And something I'm learning is it's part of what can be frustrating that people end up doing things that are um, questionable,
yeah.
questionable or like completely not okay, where
Mhm.
they're not getting any data or the data is too small, and then they start to like obviously that's a huge no-no. If you're hearing that, if anybody ever tempts you, you you just say, "Get thee behind me, Satan." You do not listen to them because academia will hunt you down 20 years later.
Yeah.
So it's just better to do things properly. So I think that's one thing that obviously you have to tell yourself, even if my data is as small as it is or as big as it is, I have to just be content that I've done my best and I've actually done my best. And here's where I am. So yeah, the most challenging part so far is they ask me this again in about 2 years. It might be something else.
It might actually happen that your next challenge is going to be that you're choking on your data because you
Oh yeah,
collected so much. So
death,
it
death
also
by
happens.
data.
Yeah. So you never know. So we wish
Yeah.
you luck. But if there's anyone in the audience that might help, who are you looking for? What sort of data are you collecting right now?
I'm looking for basically any PhD student who's in the UK and who comes from an ethnically minoritized background. So you're ethnically minoritized and you're doing health or health related, well-being related research.
Mhm.
If that's you, please just, send me a DM saying that you'd be interested and I'll send more details. But yes, it's looking for PhD students from ethnically minoritized backgrounds. And if that's you, just send me a DM.
Okay.
Thank you so much for the plug, Dr. Noni.
That's my pleasure. I mean, if we're anyone who's a PhD student here will know the pains of getting data and good data at that, and also the difficulty and discomfort of following people up on these types of things. So I think if people can help, they will be willing to do that. So Cynthia's Academia, that's your TikTok
Yes.
page. They can find you there and they can reach out if they would like to talk. I also find these types of conversations also very important because that's a moment of reflection. So I've given interviews during my time for all manner of reasons, but those also became moments for me to think about things I ordinarily wouldn't think about. And it also helped me to make some changes that were also helpful for my career. So it's not that you are just doing someone a favor, but it can also surprisingly benefit you in ways that you didn't quite anticipate. So I hope you will get, even if you get one person out of this life, that's going to be fantastic.
Definitely worth it. Thank you.
Yeah. So let's talk about what you do most of the time. You talk to people who are kind of on the fence about doing the PhD, kind of hopeful, kind of apprehensive, kind of, I don't know what goes on. So if you were to address somebody who's in the room right now who is thinking of doing a PhD, like who are the types of people that usually come up to you? So at what stage are they in their lives, for example? What is their life situation? And what do you see as the biggest barrier for them to take that first step? Let's never mind the leap, but the first step.
First step. Oh yeah, that's a really good question. So I typically help people who are either thinking of doing the PhD or have decided they want to do the PhD, but maybe they've been apprehensive about taking that next step because they don't know what they need to do. So if you're just in the ideation stage where you're like, oh, I'm not sure a PhD is a good fit for me. So what I typically do is I do a one-off consultation. I sit down with them and I say to them, okay, so what I kind of try to get into their minds about what their career goals are, what their personal life goals are, where do they see themselves, and is a PhD the right vehicle to get them there? Because some people they say they want to go somewhere, but if they see it's like you're going to London, right? You might be happy taking a bus, a train, a car, or if you are a billionaire, a helicopter, right? But some people are like, oh, they really just want to take the train, and the reason why they want to take the train is because they want to stop over in Kent, they want to stop over here, and this. So I think of the PhD like that, right? If you know your destination is London, you want to do a particular thing in your career, but we can figure out another alternative route that can take you there, and you'd be happy. You would jump on that. You jump on that alternative and snap a finger. I say that probably a PhD is not a good fit. But if you're like, okay, I definitely, see that the PhD is integral or is something that is a personal life goal that I want to, because it is a journey. It's very much a journey. Then we figure out what sort of doctorate should you be doing. Is it a professional doctorate? Is it like a PhD, like an academic PhD? So those are people who are more like on the fence thinking about it. If they're like, for sure, I know I want to do a PhD or some sort of like a professional doctorate, we then sit down together. I try to understand their goals. Where do they want to be? Typically, these people tend to be like, professionals, busy professionals who have been sitting on the idea, but because of like, commitments, they have like a family, they have a job, they are squeezed for time on putting together that application, or they've been away from academia so long, they're like, oh, okay, where do I start? Because, this is like going back to school, and school, maybe they've had like, negative memories. Maybe they did their masters and they had a particular professor who, gave them a little bit of, a negative
There's a lot of
experience.
trauma, right? There's a
Exactly,
trail
a
of
lot of
trauma
trauma.
for a lot of us entering into this space as well.
Yeah, basically. So I help them like, actually put together the application from start to finish. We go through. So I see my role as empowering them to do it. One, because when you get into your PhD, this is a solo experience. Anybody who's helping you with the application and doing it for you, like I mean fully for you, first of all, that's not academic integrity. Second of all, that doesn't help you when you are in, because then
Yeah.
the swimming, that treading of water that you should quickly do and learn in the application process, you will very quickly, that will show when you're in the program. So I find that it's very helpful to empower them in the process. So I have like some quick templates. I show them, okay, this is what your application should look like. This is what's going to make it competitive. And if anything is just feedback, you get ongoing feedback for, a long time. Some people are very lucky in the application process that they click with a supervisor. They know that this supervisor or nobody, that supervisor ends up doing something like I do for them, because that supervisor is invested in them. They want them as a student.
Yeah.
And this is what happens. The supervisors will even help them in the application process because they know what it will take to get them into the program. So they'll be giving them feedback on the application, the proposal, different things, and say, okay, good job. Well done. Be hopeful. And I have spoken to some PhD students who've had supervisors do that for them. The flip side is that some people don't have that for whatever reason. One, they don't have the time, they don't have the capacity. So, PhD supervisors themselves, professors, they're very busy, you know. So it really is about I kind of bring that flexibility to them, to their schedule, help them along the way, fast track things as best as we can in terms of like, okay, what's proper email etiquette when you're emailing a professor, right? Don't send
Oh,
them
an
like
important one. It's one of my
exactly.
pet peeves. Like the emails I don't respond to anymore. You know.
I'm
So
glad you're saying that. It's good. We please share more because people will send me, they'll be like, oh, I don't know why the professors are not responding to my emails. And they have been sending them by paragraphs, and sometimes it's like boilerplate emails that even, you know, and I tell them like if you're applying for a job interview, there are people on job panels. They know the people who have taken the time to tailor the application, who've taken the time. So it's all about those proper etiquettes in the application process as well.
let me tell
So
you one template, and I think it's an AI template because all I get a ton of emails that sound exactly like that now,
oh,
where someone says, "Dear Professor so and so." Okay, first of all, I'm not a professor, not yet. There's still a long way to go, right? But okay, let's say people don't get the distinction, right? So, dear Professor Dube, I have read your work with great interest, and I'm fascinated by this paper that you wrote on that. And therefore, I would like to ask you to be my supervisor on tourism.
yeah.
I don't even have anything to do with tourism in my work, right? But, you know, it starts with this flattery, like, oh, you're this wonderful person that I happen to come across. And look, I will give you a specific example of the type of work that you have done. And then it just goes downhill from there. It's like, no, you really didn't read my work, because if you had, then you would know that I don't even work anywhere near tourism. And another piece of advice I always give to people is that there are topics and there are methods, and these two things are important. So, whereas sometimes even the genuine candidates do get the topic right, they don't always understand that the methods are different. Like, I get a lot of requests from people who are interested in simulation or some kind of quantitative modeling, which I'm not specialized in at this point. So, yes, I have a degree in applied mathematics, but that's something that's in the rear view mirror now. I wouldn't be advanced enough to supervise someone at a PhD level to work on those methods. So it's the first thing. But the second thing, which is the biggest reason why I stopped responding to these emails, and unfortunately, yes, it's what the predecessors of the other people did that put me in this position. I used to take the time to reply to people if they missed the mark, to say, oh, thank you for your interest, but I don't work with these types of methods. You know, if you want to improve your odds, I recommend that you do these things, and then it's going to help you out. So I'm not the right supervisor for you for these reasons, but here's what you can look for next time. Do you know how many people reply to that type
I
of
know.
email? Zero. There's not even one person who came back and said, I didn't realize this, so thank you so much for letting me know. They just all disappeared like nothing had ever happened. And then I figured, well, if I am going to spend my time to try to be this helpful and I don't even get a thank you, why am I doing it? So I also don't reply anymore if there's no alignment. But for sure, when I know it's that same AI template that starts by flattering
Yeah.
you and then it just goes off with a lot of superficial blah. It's an email that could have been sent to anyone. And most times it has been sent to a lot of people. So a lot of applicants also don't realize in these departments or disciplines, people do talk to each
Yeah.
other, right? So about half the time, maybe a bit less, we will know when a student has been courting every single member of the department, right? Because we do talk, and you're like, you're talking to this student, I'm talking to
Yeah.
this student. It feels like somebody who goes on Tinder and they try to go out on a date with 12 people on the same night, you know?
Yeah.
And if those
Yeah.
people happen to know each other, it's not going to be good for you. So there is an etiquette around it. It's not just in the email, but also how
Yeah.
you court the supervisor, because it's a
Yeah.
courtship of sorts, right?
Yes.
And it does
Yes.
bother us if you're talking to 10 of us in the
Yeah.
same department at the
Yeah.
same time.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I'm so glad you're saying this because I remember one particular client, they told me they wanted to email all these supervisors, and I said no. let's just rank them. Let's rank the ones you really like are like,
Yeah,
this is my like diehard supervisors. Because you don't, I'm thinking like, even as, not even a lecturer or a professor,
yeah,
you are already privy to some level of the politics and the things that are happening. You don't know if you're courting two people who have beef with each
yeah.
other, which
Sometimes
is,
even whereas those people could be a couple. There are a lot of academic couples, but the lady
and
never took the partner's name. So
yeah,
they are sitting at the dinner table reading the same email from you. And you wouldn't know because they never merge their names. They still
yeah,
continue to do things. So,
yeah. I'm so glad you're even throwing more light and insight into this, because it's that courtship is the perfect phrase for it. Because this is one thing I would never forget from my masters. We had a professional development course as part of our masters specifically for academia, and I would never forget what um, the professor who was leading that course said. It's like, your PhD like is at least, for many people, a minimum of 5 years. In North America, at least 5 years, sometimes seven, sometimes more. You are going to have the most intimate relationship with your supervisor. There is no other academic in this world. And this, for many people, is a lifelong connection. This is the person who's a springboard for your career, who you're probably going to be talking to post PhD as well,
Yeah,
especially if you have a good relationship with them, inviting them to future works, and they're going to be doing vice versa. So why not the same level of detail that you would give when you're dating someone, like same level of etiquette when
yeah,
you're dating someone? Like, if I find out that you're talking in the same, like, it's different if it's a different institution. I think the etiquette around different institutions is different, because we all know that you're going to be applying to different programs. And even I remember in my process, I'm very upfront about that, because sometimes you can leverage that when you're trying to get funding and trying to get, more perks as part of your admissions. But in the same department, that's when it's like a huge, huge no-no, because they might be in the room trying to advocate for you as a
yeah,
student. How awkward would it be if somebody else says, wait, that student actually was sending me a bunch of emails and then ghosted me?
yeah,
All of a sudden, I never heard from them. Maybe because, oh, you took more interest in them and they really wanted you. So I didn't hear
yeah.
from them anymore. So I'm so glad you're throwing last, because people forget what's happening behind the scenes when they're applying.
And sometimes people do shady stuff, they court you as a potential supervisor, you give them ideas, you help them improve on a proposal, then they disappear, you never hear from them, then you run into them in a conference and they're using your ideas under some other supervisor. That's the most extreme case that I've ever come across. And I was like,
Oh, that's not
wow,
good.
you know?
That's not good. That's
Yeah,
really, really, really.
yeah,
Oh, that gives me the ick just hearing about it, because I feel like that would, how do you show your face is, for me personally, that's because I feel like academia is so small. You're going to run into the people you're talking to, and you always want to think like if you were dating someone and you had to part ways, would you want to have bad blood, right? You want it to be very cordial. I remember in my masters I had four offers, because I was applying for research masters. I had four offers. One of them was actually like, was I was rejected, and then it was turned around because I got full funding. So they reversed the decision to reject my application. And I remember then like going back and forth between all these supervisors, and I was very honest. I was like, I'm torn. And they would like encourage me and tell me, these are the pros and the cons for going with us versus that institution and
yeah,
that supervisor. And eventually when I had to decline some positions, I'm so glad I did it properly. And this is all, when you're open to learning, open to coaching, then you'll hear from like they'll say traditionally, like the elders, right? You show that humility, you're open to hearing feedback. And I remember one particular supervisor said to me that, you know what, Cynthia, I completely understand why you're declining. I want you to know that sometimes it's not even about the institution you go to, it's what you do with your degree that matters more. So yes, like I in Canada, McGill, even worldwide, McGill is one of the top universities in the world. I declined an offer from them. I declined an offer from University of Toronto. It was very hard because these were very
Ooh.
prestigious universities. But I was told, I was like, it's what you do with your degree that matters. And I've taken that with me. Like, I'm not attached to the name of universities. I know where I'm going with my life, what I want for myself. Like, yes, God, life can take you different places. But I know that it's not the institution's names. Like, yes, for some people it matters, your goals, it matters, but that's not what matters for me. It's what I do with my degree and what I make of that time that matters more. Because many people go to the top tier Russell Group, Ivy League universities and they never make anything of that degree beyond that, or they make such a huge mess that they have to pull out part way. Would you not rather do something that you're proud of at the end of the day,
Exactly.
and that you made an impact and you had a good supervisor, your family didn't break apart, you were able to eat and be healthy? I know people who end up having severe, like, autoimmune diseases through their degrees. For heaven's sake, like, this is like undue pressure in a program that probably was never even, supposed to be, something that you pushed yourself to go there, and it just
Yeah.
cracked you open.
Yeah.
So yeah, not to discourage anybody from, going from the stars, do it, but you have to count the cost.
Yeah, that's true. And I think it's so important also in the conversation of this supervisor, not just the degree. I have a
Mm.
YouTube video on, your success checklist if you're going to do a PhD. And I think I have three things that are about you as a person. Like, I think curiosity is a necessary condition for succeeding in the PhD. And by success, I mean you get out of it sane, you get out of it transformed. It's going to return some kind of value for you. So if you're not a curious person, then that's one of the indicators that this is not for you. But when it comes to supervisors, I also advise people better stuck with a supervisor in what you will call an obscure university, but this is a great person. They're a great match for you, your topic, and your personality and your needs as a human being,
Yeah.
than being in these top ranked universities, but you are not well fitted with your supervisor. Because at the end of the day, I think what is nice about academia is that if ultimately you will be able to get into the right journals, then no one cares where you did your
Yeah.
PhD. No one cares who your PhD supervisor was. So I will always go for those supervisors who show that they are more interested in you as a person, and that they understand that you are more than just a
Yeah.
PhD, like publication producing machine
Yeah.
potentially. Because I've heard of people who get supervisors like that, like once you are under their supervision, you are supposed to produce papers so that they can also get their publication
Mm.
counter counting. And it might mean that at times when you need to take a break, they will not be the first person to say, you need to take a break.
Yeah.
No, you need those types of supervisors. One of my supervisors, I remember him telling me, and I think we must have been coming from a funeral where he was like, you see how short life is. Like, nothing is going to be
Mm.
more important for you than your family and
Yeah.
the people in your life. So whatever you do, just always remember that you you are going to have things that are more important than this preoccupation. And that
Mm.
was not just something that I needed to hear for myself, but it was liberating in the context of the
Yes.
relationship and
Yeah.
in terms of where I was with my never ending PhD. Because I
Yeah.
could give myself then the permission to be like, okay, when things are not working, when I face other emergencies, then I'm going to attend to those things, because he has shown me that this is actually the way that you should be making decisions. And I try now to let people know that, there are things
Mm.
that you're not going to get to redo or revisit or fix. So
Yeah.
you have to consciously, always in the moment, make the decisions that are going to take you someplace good.
That's really powerful. It's really powerful. During my master's was on end of life care. Like I said, my grandpa passed away. So this is my adopted
Oh,
grandpa. He passed away, but
sorry
it was
to hear.
expected. Had cancer for a while, and then 3 months later, unexpectedly, my maternal grandma passed away.
Oh,
And that was devastating. I was just about to start data collection. And I remember my supervisor immediately, I called her, I said, this has happened. She told me, okay, I was pausing everything. She sent out an email to like, I think it was the gatekeeper for all my data collection, and they notified all potential participants that she has had a loss in the family, she's not available. And I think sometimes people, like, a loss is, these things are part of life. But I think what made it particularly hard, and which my supervisor recognized, was that I was doing a topic on death and dying. I was going to be like constantly immersed in that environment. So she was like, pause everything. And that experience, plus all I learned in my masters, I spoke to my supervisor, that first initial conversation. I said I wanted to talk to his students, his former students. And I had one student, I spoke to him. And when he told me something that my supervisor had done for him in his PhD, I was floored. I was like, what? It was like, if this is a human being that could do this for their student when they were going through one of the hardest times of their lives, and far he went, I knew that this hands down must be like an empathetic, like, that you can't fake that. And for the student to vouch for them to that level, I was like, okay, that's what I need, because I don't know, you don't know what life is going to bring along your PhD. You have no idea. Like, you
And you're
can.
already adulting, so you know you will face quite a few of those adulting problems during the PhD, right?
Yeah, it can be financial, it can be medical, it can be anything. It's life. And it might not even be with you, it might be with your loved ones. Like, is this supervisor going to be like, oh no, you were supposed to meet this and do this. Oh no, you can only take 2 weeks off because that's what the university says. I've heard of supervisors who are like, you know what, the university says two, take 10, and nobody but you and me knows that you've taken that time off.
Yeah.
And that 10 weeks, because they took it off, they came back and they hit the ground running. Rather than you're limping those other weeks, you're just limping or trying to survive. Yes, because that's what I learned, even in palliative care. Like, a normal job, let's say family member passes away, you get like bereavement 2 weeks. In end of life care, that empathetic environment, they're like, you know what, just go and rest until you're fine. You want that kind of environment, especially when you are mature students. You've got family, you've got responsibilities. You might even have elderly parents. A child. Some people have children with special needs, or this and that. You have all these things. This is in front of you. Don't go for a supervisor who's not either walked there before or helped somebody who's walked there before, because you don't have capacity to give what you don't have. Like, they can't just do it.
Yeah.
I and part of my PhD is studying this, like talking to people about their experiences, and you hear people who have positive experiences, supervisors who they've been there, so they can be honest with you and say, I've had that happen to me, or I've had a student who unexpectedly went through that, and this is what we did here, and this student will vouch for me. Talk to them, right? Or be honest, like, we all have our specialties in what we can give, and just be honest with yourself and be honest with the supervisor. This is my situation. Is this something that you're okay with? And if they say no, you part ways as friends, rather than you squeeze yourself to be something that you're not, and then halfway through you're like, this PhD is killing me. And you're wondering what happened. It's because at the start you didn't have those hard conversations, so you're going to have it either in the PhD or before the PhD. Better before than inside.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like I always say, is the supervisor relationship is, you take it as seriously as you do your romantic relationships, and the courtship is two ways, right? And something that I'm thinking, just listening to you, is that sometimes also we don't talk enough about the good supervisors. And a lot of people do not have a model of what a good supervisor is. Like, I had the best supervisors in the world. Like, I would choose them over multiple lifetimes if I had to, right? And it's not because we didn't have conflicts. We did. They actually did let me go crazy on them a couple of times. Like, this is the level of support that I had. And one of my favorite supervisor stories is that, you will know this, Cynthia, my PhD took 8 years. I talk about this all the time. So it happened after the defense. I stayed at my university where I did that just to spend time with one of my supervisors, try to get a chapter developed for publication or something. And then we were having lunch, and I asked him, like, is there a time that you thought she's never gonna finish? Because 8 years for what should have been a 3-year PhD. And at the end of year 2, I really looked like I could finish in year 3, but life happened, things went south, and this is where we were. And then he said to me, every year since you left, I left around year 5 to start a new job. I was getting a request from registry, like, should we keep this person registered or should we remove them? And he was like, every year his answer was the same: when she's ready, it's going to get done. Keep it open. So he did that a few years in a row. I never got a call from him like, oh, registry called again, and you still haven't done, like the type of pressure that people put sometimes on others. I had the moments where I just ghosted them, just went quiet because I was so embarrassed. Like, I made all these grand promises and I couldn't deliver on any of them. But that his faith never wavered, and that he actually protected me from these things that induce anxiety and make things actually worse, just hearing about it at the very end of it. And at a moment it comes when, just because I asked. So if I hadn't asked him, I wouldn't know that this is one of the biggest things that he did for me behind the scenes. So we do need to talk more about such great supervisors, so people have an idea that they exist, and people also understand that you are worth something. Once you do a PhD, you are bringing something of value, and you have to recognize yourself as such and take your time in picking who you're going to be stuck with for 3, 4, in my case, 8 years. Maybe in the end, they were stuck with me. I don't think I was stuck with them, because I should have finished much sooner, right? But it's become, as you say, like a relationship of a lifetime. Like, these are people that I will always be fond of,
Wow, that's so heartwarming. And you know what I love about this story, and I shared a post on LinkedIn about this, is that your supervisors are amazing for you, but maybe for me, it would have been like a we could have it would have just been like not a good fit. And I just realized that a good supervisor is someone who's a good fit for you, for your life
Yes.
situation, for your
Yes.
interests, and for your working style. Like, some people want their supervisors to leave them alone and they get on with it. Some people need a supervisor going, "Oh, what are you up to?" They need that pressure, they need that environment. Or some supervisors just mold to the student. They go on the journey that the student are willing to take them on. And vice versa. Some people want to be led. They want the supervisor to say, "What have you been doing?" And that kind of working style might not work well for me. And for someone, it might be the best fit. I think it's all about finding the best fit for you and your life situation, because that's what's going to feel good for you. Because it's like somebody else's spouse is not going to be good for you,
Yeah.
and your spouse is not going to be good for someone else. And even children, like, certain children, they just flow well with certain parents, or maybe they get along better with their uncles or their aunties. Doesn't make the child bad, doesn't make the parent bad. It just means that there's just a personality clash there. And for that supervisory relationship, it's just important for you to reflect, who am I as a learner? What do I want? What do I need to thrive? Like, when I did well in that course, what happened? Oh, the supervisor gave me space. Oh, no, the supervisor was like telling me, oh, what's going on? Because you get a microcosm of that in your BSc and your masters when you're doing those mini projects. You see that mini supervisory relationship. Ask yourself, did that work for me? Did it not work? Did I panic? Did I have anxious attacks every time I saw this person? Why? And asking those hard questions, it can feel invasive for yourself. And sometimes I have these like deep dive coaching sessions, and it
Yeah.
feels really invasive, like, going back to those uncomfortable memories. But if you don't do that, you'll end up gravitating to what didn't work for you just because it feels familiar and you think that's what good should look like. It's like toxic relationships. Some people are like, oh, I know this person all my life. It's like, you should be running the
With
other way.
Bonnie and Clyde. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm so glad you brought it up. Yeah, good supervisors, they are so important, but like, good really depends on the context and your life situation.
Yeah. Yeah. I was always like, in a way, wild, and I needed people who could let me be wild. I think in my acknowledgements, I also say they let me be myself. I know there's a lot wrong with me, whatever wrong means, but I don't fit a typical mold in many respects. And they were all for
Yeah.
it. They were like,
Yeah.
"No, you know, just do your thing, and whenever you're done, we know you will come round." And that was
Mhm.
absolutely liberating, and that's exactly what I needed. But yes, I also hear people who say I lack support, and by that they mean that my supervisor is not checking on me every 2 days or something like that.
That's a very interesting question. Because support for some students, like I think every 2 days is a for I from my perspective feels a bit much. I think the purpose of a PhD is to help you develop some level of independence.
Hmm.
Like maybe in the beginning, yes, every week is reasonable because you're new to this. Depending on your background, you might be completely like in deep waters. Like when I started my PhD, I probably had more experience than most typical PhD students. And I've swam in deep waters before coming to my PhD, so I wasn't really afraid of the deep waters for the PhD. What was I was afraid of was I was not going to have any data
Yeah.
at the end of it. But like I think you have to kind of like be also realistic as well in terms of your expectations. If you're looking for like a lot of like cuddling and stuff, you have to also recognize that the PhD process is about like getting you on your feet. Like if you think about a child from when they're born to 5 years, they go from a level of dependence to a level of independence. If you're afraid, if you think you will need constant checking in throughout, it might be best for you to, reevaluate, am I ready right now? Do I need to maybe develop some more research skills and develop more independence and feel more confident before going into the PhD?
Oh, thank you for that. Now we are past the hour mark. I had tried to keep this within the hour, so I'm gonna try to ask some of the main questions that I think people might have if they're at the beginning or about to make the decision. But I wanted to take some time now to ask some questions from Duke of East. Sorry, Duke of East, that it's taken a while to get to your questions. So there are two, and I'm gonna ask them one after the other. The first one was, what are your thoughts on having a supervisor outside of the study jurisdiction of a PhD?
Mm, study jurisdiction. I'm not quite sure what they
So I
mean.
don't know, maybe Duke of East, you can clarify because I see that you're still in the chat. The way that I understood the question is that maybe they are not an academic, right? Or they may
Mm.
not be, I don't know, you get a lot of highly experienced people in industry, for example.
Oh, okay. I see. I think one thing I'm learning through my own PhD research is that there will be official supervisors, but you can have informal people in your network as well that support you. So for some people that's their family members. Like if you have a spouse, you might force your spouse to read your work.
Yeah.
If they're able to like just read it and give you some feedback. Sometimes it's just like a lay summary they might give you feedback on. You might have a mentor in industry, especially if you know you want to do a PhD and go back into industry. It's definitely a very good idea to keep that industry connection, keep them in the loop of your research so that at least you're doing something that's valuable and that can help you transition back.
Yeah.
um, and you might have other academics as well. Our PhD students tend to rely on peer groups as well. We meet each
Yes.
other, show each other's work, get feedback on that. So that's super. Oh, I think you said I mean to have a professor from another university. Oh, that's an interesting one. I think it depends on what your supervisor themselves, the main supervisors, the primary supervisor is comfortable with. Like you have to negotiate that with the primary supervisor and the institution. I have a supervisor on my panel who's from another university, but they started off in my university and they
They moved.
moved universities, yeah, because they had a different appointment. So my primary supervisor just advocated for them to stay on as an external. And it's not unusual. So in North America, it's not unusual sometimes to have external supervisors. If that person has a particular need, you have to justify why they're there ultimately to your supervisor and to the institution. Why does that person need to be on my panel? They've got this particular expertise, or they've got insight, or they've got links in terms of my data collection, or they're the only expert in this whole world on this particular topic that I also am incorporating. And something you said earlier about like, emailing supervisors, there's topic, there's methodology, there are different things. Like maybe this person is a methodological expert, but the primary supervisor just has, you know, little bit of experience, so they want somebody else on the
Yeah.
supervisory team who has insight and in-depth knowledge. So I think it's all about justifying why do you want that person and making sure your primary supervisor is okay with it.
Yes.
Do not ever do anything.
Especially that you don't first talk to someone and then talk to your supervisor, right?
Yeah.
They have to be part of that decision the moment you are in a committed relationship,
Yes.
right? Because they also will have to deal with whatever baggage this other person brings with them. In my case, I didn't have more supervisors than two, so I had two supervisors sitting in my institution, but I learned through them just already from working on my first empirical chapter that it's okay to bring in expertise that you don't have within the supervisory team. So I was working on a topic that none of them had worked with. And although they understood the concepts, they understood a lot of things, the specificities of the topic were a bit difficult for them to sort of evaluate and know if they were worth something. So at their own suggestion, we brought in another person who was going to be the content expert, and they could help with everything else. And that was part of the reason that this first empirical chapter goes on to become a top publication. So my first ever academic publication was a top publication in a journal that has a 6% acceptance rate. So that's
Wow.
pretty cool. And it was only possible because they recognized the need of a content expert for us to be able to really bring it up to the level that was going to hit such a top journal. And by the time we got the second one, I was already looking around. I was like, I'm interested in now resilience. That's something different. And yes, they were great, but they were like, we haven't done resilience. So
Yeah.
I found the resilience expert to work with. And I did the same for my final chapter as well. So in that respect, although I have two PhD supervisors, I have an additional three people that are brought in at different times for different reasons. And it's one of the things that I continue to value because one, of course, it expanded my network, but two, it also helped me to become a kind of generalist, right? So I didn't stay in the same lane. And that was part of the problem they had to manage. So giving me the freedom to do whatever I want also meant that it was like they were going to do these types of things and they were so accommodating. So yes, I have on paper two supervisors, but I work with five people during the course of my PhD.
That's amazing. And those other people, do they get recognition, supervisory recognition as well, or was it just your two main supervisors?
No, on paper, it's still the two main
Oh,
supervisors. The
wow.
others, when the work gets published or if the work gets
Okay.
published. I mean,
Yes.
of course, they still made the acknowledgements. So during my acknowledgements, I took the time to mention them and the important role that they played during my PhD journey. But you know how formal it is with the
Yes.
supervising. You know, that's a very difficult thing to change. So it was good, and I hope I will get to publish with all of them eventually. So that's the next
Awesome.
yeah.
Oh, really good. You said you had another question. The Duke of East had another
Yes, I
question.
see also there's a question from Loster that I hope we will be able to keep track of. But the last question from the Duke of East was, should a candidate ask their supervisor for teaching opportunities?
I think the answer is in that question itself. It's first of all, I think you should ask yourself, do you want to teach? Most PhDs require that you have to have like teaching experience because
Yeah.
traditionally a PhD is sort of like an academic degree that helps you become a higher education um, professional. So there is like teaching built into your training, typically from most universities. In the UK, I believe it's a core requirement as well. So
Mhm.
there will be teaching opportunities that even if your supervisor doesn't give you, the department will like throw in your face over and over again. So that usually starts off with marking, TAing, teaching assistant, and then you can slowly build your experience and build qualifications. You can do all these things to help you get there. So I think it depends on how important it is to you. Do you love teaching? Do you see yourself as an academic who wants to go in and be a professor, lecturer, and if that's something you do, then you might want to prioritize that early on and build that experience into your degree and say it up front with the supervisor, I want to teach as soon as possible and see what they say. If they're like, oh, I don't know, you already know where you know where they
Yeah.
stand. But it's very unlikely. I've not heard of any sort of like supervisor not encouraging teaching, um, unless maybe they're
Unless they
super
might say,
into
"Oh, you're too weak. We can't get you to multitask." But I think if you
Yes, yeah,
stay in academia, that's a very important thing for your CV as well, because when you go on the job market, they're gonna ask about your teaching experience. So
yeah,
if you know that you would like to stay on, or potentially you might be interested, then it's one of the things to get on your CV. And yes, a lot of times you will have to ask for it. A lot of things don't happen during the PhD because PhD candidates never ask and PhD supervisors never think it's that important. So it goes back to what you were talking about earlier, Cynthia, that, it's about finding the right person for you, but that also means you have to know what you want and you have to make the necessary asks at critical junctures in
yes,
order to be able to get what you need from your supervisors. So never assume that it's obvious to them what you want because different candidates want different things. Never
yeah,
assume that it is given that things are going to go a particular way. You are shaping the relationship, you're determining the dynamics of the relationship, and you are also determining what kind of help you get. So ask,
yeah,
always ask. And I always say, in the worst case, they will say no.
yeah,
But at least you've asked, at least you've verbalized, at least you've been clear. And don't wait until you get to a point where you are frustrated about, usually based on your assumptions and nothing that was really explicitly communicated to them, right? So sometimes PhD candidates wait until the moment where they are essentially just exploding because they've been holding things in for such a long time. And then it
yeah,
becomes difficult to resolve the issue, as it were, because first of all, people never knew there was an issue. They assumed everything was normal because you never said anything, but you assumed everything was obvious to them and you assumed that they were deliberately sabotaging your ambitions when really they didn't know. So I always encourage people, verbalize if it looks like things are not happening. While you are happy and your head is clear and you're able to talk, express yourself, ask for that conversation and make those requests and make them quite clear. Don't talk in riddles. I also never do that.
yeah,
Like, say quite directly in very specific, very succinct terms, this is what I need and what will it take for me to be able to get that, right?
yeah. Yeah, yeah, that's so true. I think one thing I learned very early on with my supervisor is if I have a tendency towards something, I just say it. Like, for example, I know that I need hard deadlines and I'll set those deadlines. If they're flexible deadlines in theory, because your PhD, like people forget, it's one long deadline until your final thesis is done. So you might have to set mini deadlines. So if I'm like, okay, I need this deadline to be like a public deadline, everybody on the team is aware. If more people in the department needs to know,
Yeah.
that adds that pressure. But it's something that you negotiate. You just have to say what you need. And most I think some people can be judgmental, but I'm very lucky that I didn't. I've always had supervisors that are not judgmental, and they were very honest. Like my supervisor would tell me, "Don't hold things in." I did it as well. I had a PhD, and I would hold things in, and I'd say, "Oh yeah, everything's going along," but nothing is happening. He's like, "I've been there. Just tell me and just be honest."
Yeah,
So I know
don't
that nothing needs
complain
to
to your
happen.
husband every night or whoever is has the misfortune of being close to you outside of the PhD environment, right? Talk to the people who can change things. Your
Yes.
partner or whoever is not going to change things. The person who changes things is the person that you're smiling at, and then you start screaming the moment their back is turned.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so this is one question that we had from Lothar, and I don't know if they're still in the room. I need help. My supervisor doesn't take me step by step. I feel their level is too high of supervising.
Mm. Very, very interesting question. That's a very interesting question. I think I'd be curious to know more about the dynamic and the relationship before really offering any particular insight. Um, yeah, it's a very tricky one because you can say one thing or the other, but you don't know the supervisor themselves or the student. What's the dynamic?
Yeah.
I would say for this person, I think, are you a master's or PhD student? That's the first question. Because if you're a master's or PhD, there's different level of expectations. If you're likely a PhD student, I think if there's one thing in particular that you're struggling to understand or know, I think if you've put effort in trying to learn it on your own, so that's something that is a core skill of your PhD. You have to learn how to learn things on your own, independent researcher, remember?
Yeah.
So you put that first bit of effort to try on your own and you're struggling, then you reach out to your supervisor and you can say, I've tried this and this and this and nothing's happening. So I'll give you an example. I'm writing a particular chapter. I have to write about ontology, epistemology. Ugh, that is like, ugh, like, no. And I've tried, I struggle. I asked my supervisor, is there anything? And my supervisor is honest and says, you know what? I think this other supervisors might be better suited to provide you insight on this. So I go to the other supervisors, they give me insight. They're like, oh, actually, I know a different person in the department who's an expert on this, who can help you. Maybe they'd be willing to dedicate 15, 20 minutes to explain that to you. Most academics are very nice, especially if your supervisor has a good relationship with them and they have the capacity, they will do it. So I think you need to put in some time on your own to learn it step by step. Go on YouTube, read papers, learn. Remember, you're an independent
Yeah.
learner. You have to try. And then if you go and then tell your supervisor, evidence that you've tried, this is what is the actual roadblock. And then they can help you and say, oh, actually, maybe I might not be the best person to do this to you. Let's go to your second or third supervisor, or let's go to someone else in the department who can help you, or even someone in a different institution. But please, please, please try. You know, your supervisor is doing their best as well. I don't know their situation and if they're a good supervisor, but try to evidence some effort as well from your side. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Dr. Noni.
Yes, that's I'm thinking along those lines, and I'm thinking your response is more generous, because if I had gone first, I would have started by saying, actually, they shouldn't be helping you step by step. If you're expecting step by step assistance, you're asking for too much. So the way I would usually receive it is the student wants me to do the work for them, and then they collect the credit through a grade. So I would usually tell students, even at the master's level, this is you becoming master of something. And the independent learning element is so important. So I usually do not take kindly to questions like, what should be in my literature review? How many words do I need in the introduction? Is this okay? Here is a draft. Is this okay? What do you mean? Like, if you have a draft, the way that I will be very proud of you as a student is if you say, I've made this draft, I have these doubts, right? Maybe I have these theories and I'm not quite sure which one works well. I like this one for this reason, but I like that one for that reason, and I'm not sure how to make it work. This is the level of conversation that I'm expecting to have, even at the master's dissertation level, right? So the step-by-step help isn't there. Once you have a dissertation guide, that gives you all the step-by-step that you need. For the rest, the assumption is that through the coursework that you have completed up to that point, and usually there'll be a module leading to the dissertation if it's a master's level, and there they will also tell you everything that you need. So I think it is probably on purpose, or it's just good training if you are left to figure things out by yourself. The way I like to also explain it to my students is that you are preparing to go and be a decision maker in the world, right? So once you have a master's or PhD, you're starting already at a high level of entry. No one is giving you any step-by-step anything to anything, because they're paying you for your knowledge and your ability to figure things out. So this is the training ground. This is where you start to build that confidence, but within a very safe environment, right? So if you go and you try something out and it's just ridiculous and bad, then they will tell you, and then they will have something very concrete, very specific to work with in order to guide you further beyond that. So I really always will discourage this kind of expectation, because you are developing as an independent thinker, even at the master's level. And that necessarily means that those step by step guides are out the door. And even if they were there, they are just lists. They are not really about the process and the nuanced bits that are so difficult to
Yeah.
communicate, that you can only capture through challenging yourself and trying to complete a lot of things as independently as you possibly can. So that would be my take on that. And I think it's also down to expectations. Again, we would need more from you to know, like, what is the step by step that you are talking about, and what is missing. Because if you're writing a paper, well, this is your step by step. These are your sections: intro, lit, review, methods, results, discussion. So what other step by step do you need there? Right? Or what needs to be in each section? That information is there. So what more is missing in terms of the guidance? And then that might help. So maybe I am a bit too harsh because I don't have the full context, but I do have, in general, that notion that you are guided step by step, for me, is one that I really don't like. I would like for a student to tell me exactly where they're stuck, the ways in which they're stuck, because this is the basis then for a very rich conversation and for really deepening their knowledge. And it's a good way to build relationships with supervisors as well.
Yeah, that's a really, you're right, because that insight, and I I'm trying not, I don't want to discourage them as well, but I think it does help because I'm having flashbacks to my second degree, my bachelor's, where I had experience with quantitative data working in a lab setting. This was my first time going into the field, collecting data, taking notes, recordings, and I was supposed to do something called thematic analysis. And this, I'm a bachelor's level, but I was supposed to be doing an honors degree. So I remember thinking I would be so embarrassed if I go and tell the supervisor I don't know what thematic analysis is. So I went on YouTube, I went reading, I read, I did as much as I could, and then I'm so frustrated. I went to supervisor. I was like, I don't know if I've done this correctly, and he was like, "Oh, looks good." And that was so much weight off my shoulder because at least I knew that I was starting somewhere and I wasn't far out of left field because I thought I was just doing it completely like I'm doing some other type of analysis instead of thematic analysis. But he was like, "Oh, looks just about like you're doing the right thing, kind of." So I think what you said is spot on. I think you have to remember that you are becoming a researcher, an independent researcher, and you have to start evidencing that because that's how people can pour into you. But if you're expecting to be spoon fed, then it might not be not to say you should give up on your degree, but maybe we need to work on that mindset.
Yeah,